Towson Baltimore Shotgun here, and my next guest gets us lots of guests. Luke, we go home and people say, how do you get, all of these Hall of Famers to come and hang out and pitch their products and all that? And I said, well, I've pitched products for 25 years, so I sort of understand how this thing works, but there's the people behind the people. They have handlers. That's what it's called, right? Handlers. So Jason Teitler's here. He is the managing director and a chair fan experience. It's a lot of stuff on here. Mine just says, I think, dude.
Radio guy.
I'm not sure, but you do brand marketing, and you align with professional athletes and have for a long time behind the scenes in doing Radio Row, and I'm sure there's a million other things you do that I don't know about. And you've done a Super Bowl survey, and first off, welcome in, man. I'm glad you're coming on. I mean, a lot of guys around here wouldn't want to sit here and talk about Super Bowl surveys and the business, but that's what makes this machine run. And for 25 years, every year, we see it get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, listen, it's very important to understand what the fan is looking for. If you don't understand what the fan's looking for, then how can you create content that's going to appeal to them?
Give the people what they want.
Absolutely. Right. So, first of all, thank you for all your help. You've been very, very generous with us. We love bringing our guests on the show. You certainly do a great job interviewing them. But at Burson Marsteller, what we want to make sure, because a lot of the folks we bring on are talking about various brands, are talking about various trends, is to make sure we're providing the right match between the brand, the fan, and the game. And if you're not understanding...
You don't want me pimping mascara, in other words.
Well, I don't think anyone wants that, but let me tell you one thing. If you're not following the science, if you're not following the evidence, then basically you're just talking, right? You're not talking...
If you're not measuring it,
100%, right?
You got to
before, during, and after, right? So you've got to understand what the fan is resonating towards. You got to figure out what they want as individuals, because if you're a brand who understands that, you're going to form better relationships. So that's what we do at Burson Marsteller. Our fan experience team does a lot of research. We've done our 4th annual Super Bowl survey, and what it tells us is what are fans' attitudes, behaviors, their desires,
and they
engaging
change
constantly. In fact,
that's
while
one of the
we're
problems
talking,
for the league. I mean, the Ravens just put together this $144 million thing that Luke and I are going to talk about with more scoreboard, and I like the football game. I don't need any crab races. I don't mind being marketed to. Hell, it's what I do for a living. But I also, I'm not 20 years old, and I'm not stimulated by the same things that our children are stimulated by.
Well, you bring up a good point. You mentioned a younger audience, right? One of the things that we've measured are certainly millennials' behaviors towards football, professional sports, entertainment in general. And we're finding that there's, no joke, a big shift between the older generation, the younger generation.
We want different stuff.
Totally different stuff. So you probably
Cam Newton doesn't appeal to me. The wide receivers popping off after games don't appeal. The prancing doesn't appeal to me.
Right.
Right. Getting arrested doesn't appeal to me. Right. So, but that being said, it doesn't chase me away either. And I guess for this game and the largeness of all of this stuff, you're trying to find some sort of a connection, because the bigger it gets, the harder it is to connect.
Absolutely.
The harder it is to feel close to an athlete. And I tell you what, we sit here and we talk to players all the time, and everyone in your position is trying to figure out, well, you're famous. Now what do we do with that?
Right.
How can that be beneficial to everybody?
Right, because if you guess, you're lost. So you've got to follow the evidence and follow the science. We were talking about just a second ago the younger audience and the older audience, right? You may not prefer to watch a game with a virtual reality headset on. However, a younger audience certainly is looking forward to that. And when there's a lot of talk now about the NFL and how some of the ratings are dipping and, oh my God, the sky's falling. The sky's not falling. The NFL's in great shape. But the difference is that different audiences, particularly a younger audience, are looking for different mechanisms to be able to consume sports content.
Well, I've seen over the last 22 years, I'm a PSL holder. I'm on the road. I'm at home. This is the best tailgating place on earth in Houston. This
certainly is.
I've tilted a beverage in every parking lot in the league,
right.
Literally. And the thing I'm seeing changing with younger people is they're more into drinking. They're more into the gambling, fantasy.
Yep.
That
fantasy
is way
football.
more important than it's saying Raven or having a beef for Baltimore or hometown loyalty or I hate the Steelers. I don't hate the Steelers. Antonio Brown's my wide receiver. And I'm like that doesn't resonate with me. I'm a team guy, not an individual. And I have individual players I like watching play. I like watching Julio Jones catch the ball. I like
the fundamentals of football, like the game.
Yeah, but Ray Lewis's dance in our city was, in a lot of places, considered to be dressing that was unnecessary or sort of WWE and Terrell Suggs comes out with these masks on, and it's
right.
And it doesn't appeal to me. It doesn't turn me off, but it's more of a negative than a positive.
You're not looking for someone to be the ultimate warrior on the field.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Lee, I want to give you something else. And Luke, I want to bring you in on this because as a kid, I went to MISL games. And Jock over here at Charlotte was asking me about Blast games, and he was really into the Philadelphia team and all that. And the thing that stood out in 1985 about that was they played disco music when the ball was in play. Mm-hmm. It sounded like an arcade, right? It sounded like a dance. And it appealed to, I was 16 years old, and I went, and my dad loved it, and my dad would have been 97 years old. So I don't know if it's generational, but I went to 5 NBA games in 7 nights. When Niels came to America, that God saved my wife's life. We took him around, 2 games in L.A., Golden State, Washington, and the Knicks at the Garden. And I am astonished at how it sounds like, not like an arcade, it almost sounds like a casino when the game is in play. And I find that to be incredibly distracting, and it draws me more to college basketball.
Right.
Because at a college basketball
game,
you hear sneakers, you hear the ball bouncing, you hear the cheerleaders cheering, the band
and
playing.
And there might be a good old-fashioned mascot, right?
And the Duke fans chanting stuff and clapping and you suck and all. I like all of that.
Sure.
That's the sound of sports to me. But the sounds change around this and what you're looking for. Music, in-house presentation, video boards. Larry Rosen, my dear friend from Jacksonville, did that for the Ravens. And I said, just give me the game. But that's not enough, right? And that's where you come in, is trying to keep engagement around people that aren't into the 3-4 defense.
But based on the evidence, right? So you're one example of one particular demographic that the NFL and many of these leagues don't want to lose. They don't want to alienate, but at the same time, they have to cater to these other audiences that are looking for different types of things, right?
Sure.
And some of these audiences are looking for more technology, giving them access to players, giving them access to teams, giving access to stats. Well, mobile actually, it's interesting you bring that up because we start thinking about virtual reality, which is a big movement in the sports world. Mobile needs to catch up because the content quality is there. You got brands like NextVR that are creating amazing content, let's say at an NBA game, where you're able to see things as if you're right there center court, but the phone itself needs to be a bit more elevated from a technology perspective so you could see that great content.
It's coming.
Oh, it's there. It's absolutely there.
If I go to Tokyo, I'll see it right now.
You could see it now if I'm here in the U.S.
Consumer Product Show last
CES?
2 weeks ago in Vegas.
So those brands were certainly there, but even right now, I mean, with the NBA and many other leagues, virtual reality is a real thing happening every week.
Wow.
It's a very big deal. But the important thing for people to realize, especially when they start talking about, the NFL's, they're not. It's a diverse platform for people to pick what's appropriate for them. Right? We found in our study, the Burson-Marsteller 4th Annual Super Bowl study, that many viewers are even considering cutting the cord, which means that they would watch content through their devices and stream and even cancel their cable subscriptions because their preference for consuming content would be taken care of.
Well, there's no doubt the cable television industry has arced.
Yes.
I mean, we're in Baltimore where the baseball owner has made hundreds of millions of dollars off of this transfer of this franchise. It's made him billionaire wealthy when he just wanted to own the baseball team and bought in to be a civic leader and all that stuff 20 years ago.
That's right. Yeah.
And television has been where all of that is. But now to keep the engagement, people don't want to go and sit in the upper deck sometimes. No. They don't want to pay. I mean, this whole Chargers moving up to L.A. I mean, we sit and talk about this stuff because this was the first year in Baltimore where we saw it go the other way. Couldn't give your Ravens tickets away. Thursday on Facebook, who wants my tickets?
Right.
I don't want to go. You go to the games, you see seats that aren't filled. You see visiting fans start to come in more. And that worries the Ravens.
Well,
and it should worry the Ravens. It doesn't worry the Orioles because they're making so much money that dollar for dollar, they almost don't even want to deal with the fans. The fans are an inconvenience to fill up the stadium on certain nights, and we're not making a certain price point, off of the $12 beers and all that stuff. And, I'm to the point now where I'm offended by some experiences of trying to have a beer at a concert that I feel like, in what other environment ever would I spend $16 for that? Like, it doesn't even compute to me.
See,
right?
I like the point you're bringing up because there's a lot of inconveniences now out there for different types of fans.
The Falcons did a whole thing with the cheap hot dogs in the drinks.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's
Listen,
an unbelievable
the Yankees have $5 game night, right? And a lot of people don't know that. But the bigger problem is they don't want to. Well, yeah, they don't want to travel. They don't want to sit in traffic for
coming from
3
Jersey
hours.
over to a Yankees game is like.
And you just described my life because I'm a season ticket holder from Jersey, so I deal with all that.
So it's like digging your own grave trying to get across the bridge.
Completely.
Right?
Well, yeah, you're just sitting on the GWB. So you've got these different audiences.
And that was before Chris Christie was the
right.
I got come on.
Yeah, that's fine by me, man.
I got to give him a kick,
Yeah. So I mean, you got these audiences who don't want to deal with these inconveniences, and they have access to all this different technology to be able to consume their passion. Why would they go to the game? So people only see that one sliver.
I live 2 blocks from Camden Yards.
Yeah.
Except when Jim Hunter's calling the games, I love sitting at home. Luke loves sitting at the game. You love.
But
how would you change the Camden Yards experience? Well, I mean, what do you like or dislike about it?
I think it's a good experience, but at the same time, Camden Yards, and this is just one example, but I think it applies in many other markets.
Great stadium.
Yeah, it's a great stadium. It's been a good product for the last 5 years. They've been to the playoffs 3 times. They've had at least a non-losing record every single year. But so the weekends, they do fine. They draw well, especially as you get into the summer. But weeknights, even in the summer, has been an issue. Now, they have a really good promotional schedule. They have lots of giveaways, T-shirts, bobbleheads, all those different things.
When they do that,
But they've done all of that on the weekend. And, they have the tiered pricing like you're seeing everywhere. So even when the Red Sox are in town during the week, the prices are jacked up. Right. My whole thing that I've even talked to members of the organization, you have to give people incentive to want to get into the car, especially on a weeknight, knowing that they're going to be dealing with traffic and rush hour and all those things. And yet those incentives that they've provided for people to go to games, it's always on the weekend. So why are you surprised that your weekend attendance then is really good and your weeknight attendance stinks?
And then there's things you can't control, right?
Right.
I mean, the Orioles aren't going to be able to control how much gas costs and tolls and all that stuff.
I can't begin to tell you how much that has affected some people's psychology. I live 2 blocks away from the stadium, and I just don't. I don't have fun when I go to their. Now, I'll say this: I'm nuts, right? I did 30 ballparks and 30 nights for the Bone Marrow Registry two years ago. So I spent an entire month every morning flying into Airport X, into City X, setting up a booth in a lot of stadiums, swabbing people. I got my Give a Spit my shirt on here. I wore this shirt at the booth. So and. I'll be honest with you, man. I was treated like garbage by some teams. I was treated awesome. I mean, the Houston Astros, I'm going to the fan shop and buying the Jose Cruz throwback Starboard because I didn't buy it that night because I was so mobile, moving around every day. I didn't want to accumulate stuff, through all of this. And I don't remember, Luke, this is amazing because like the crab races in Baltimore on the scoreboard and
the hot dog races.
Yeah, the ketchup relish. He tweets about it every night. He's got a following.
It's my shtick.
It's a shtick.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
Well,
but I don't remember one thing in any of those ballparks that spoke to me about the experience other than like hanging out with the Kirby Puckett statue in a place or seeing the Jerry Coleman statue in center field in San Diego or the Tony Gwynn, like the McCovey, Willie Mays in San Francisco, doing that stuff, or like drinking tequila like an idiot in the upper deck with my wife in Oakland and the flies in the bathroom. And I remember that stuff far more than but I did sense, and especially in the NBA, how hard the NBA's trying to promote everything other than the game. At hockey's about hockey, bro. I mean, you go to a hockey game, you sit down, and a hockey game breaks out. And you know what? That's good enough. Yeah. The hockey game's good enough. And when the hockey game takes a breather, I don't want any crab race. I need a towel. If we're playing 4-on-5 for 4 minutes.
Or boxing gloves, depending on the matchup.
And I know you love boxing and the MMA thing. And, it's just it's fracturing, right? I mean, I'm an old school newspaper guy from the 80s where it was baseball, football, basketball, a little bit of hockey, my area lacrosse, and then there was professional wrestling, NASCAR, all that. But this is,
so let me
the X Games and all of that. You're trying to get an X Games viewer to become a Rams fan in L.A.
Let me ask you guys a question,
that's a reach,
because you're bringing up very valid points, that there are challenges for teams and leagues and engaging fans of different demographics and preferences. What about the brands, right, who are sinking a lot of money into these relationships, yet there aren't as many people going to ballparks, but we know they're consuming this content through a variety of other mechanisms. That's where we feel there's a tremendous amount of opportunity just by understanding what audiences prefer as far as consuming the sport they love. So a regular brand who would normally put their name up on the outfield wall or in the concourse or sponsor one of those
Old
hot dog
school
races.
stuff. They want
Right.
something that's more measured.
They've got to diversify,
Yeah.
right? So if they want to hit a variety of different age demographics because their product reaches, across the spectrum, they've got to understand all the options that are available to them. And as things like virtual reality come up, as things like streaming become much more dominant, they need to also pivot and recognize that, my God, we've got to sink our money into these different avenues if we're going to be relevant to these younger audiences.
Well, go ahead.
The streaming thing to me is fascinating, not just in how we're consuming and how you do have this chasm between millennials and younger kids who grew up on Netflix and Hulu and all that different stuff. And sports is kind of lag behind that because it is live. It's that other stuff.
And because it can live in the old world because it's the one thing
that
translates
it's appointment
to the
TV.
old world.
Right. So, but it's clearly trending in that direction. And I know perfect example, Sunday Night Football, they did the streaming where you could choose the different camera angles. That to me,
game changer.
And that's I mean that's where it is, and I'm someone who doesn't stream a whole lot, but if I can personalize what I'm watching, and if I can watch an all 22 view as opposed to just the TV broadcast view, that's a game changer. That makes it and there's something where there is value to that I might pay for on top of just thinking of regular broadcast.
And why not be a brand that's sponsoring that, providing additional content that isn't available through the team, doing, let's say, stadium tours, doing other interviews. All of a sudden, a brand that's not relevant in the sports space becomes relevant in the sports space.
Right.
And we do that with a lot of the brands that we work with, whether it be an insurance company, whether it be a consumer packaged goods company, is understanding all those different shifts. And here's one other complicated thing. People look at some of this data, if they're even smart enough to do science around how to market their products, they're looking at it from an age perspective. You throw fantasy football players in there, just as one example, that's not an age thing. That is a mindset, a lifestyle, a culture in and of itself where you've got
if you
older
advertised
people,
on
younger people
Letterman
together.
or Leno, you would have had the whole spectrum, right? Sports is one place where that happens, and we talk about baseball. That's a problem baseball is going to have with its whiteness and its oldness.
It's the oldest sport.
Yeah, and look, and back to Luke, I want to jump on what you were doing. For me, being an old fart, I just want it to be easy. I just want it to work.
Right.
Show me where the button is on here, where the game is.
Give me a remote control.
My
I'm good.
mom's 97 years old. She can't find the Orioles game.
But easy is TV. Streaming gives you a chance to customize something.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't, like Twitter right now is streaming Thursday Night Football. There's no appeal for that for me right now because it's the same exact thing as when I turn on CBS or NBC on that Thursday night. Give me something a little bit different. Give me something that I can customize.
This is interesting because you're more a purist, and you're like, I'll take a little bit of a chance.
I'm a purist, but I'm willing to venture into
and that's
that.
why the data is important because what's going to appeal to you is going to be different than what appeals to you, right?
Right.
And if you start thinking about, yes, you got the age groups, you got the also the cultural demographics like fantasy football players, and you start throwing some other things in there, and I'll give you an example I think will really appeal to you and where you've been in your life. We found through the Super Bowl study that a lot of the audience, meaning Super Bowl viewers, have an appetite for brands to talk a little bit more about what they represent in the community. Now, how many Super Bowl commercials have you seen with a brand who's doing something other than some goofy thing that's comical,
trying to sell something,
with pretty people? Well, we found that the audience has a hunger for hearing the wholesome stories that brands have around their business, around the people that they cater to, around their neighborhood.
Sure.
And
telling their story.
Yeah, but a good one. Like, let's say it's what are you giving back to the community? What's your environmental story? We threw that into the survey because we had a feeling, based on a younger generation that's a little bit more considerate of what, is happening within their lives and the neighborhoods they live in, maybe that is going to show itself when it comes to the marketing, and it did. So if there's a brand that's smart and savvy that follows the science and realizes that there isn't a heck of a lot of commercials that are out there talking about some wholesome stuff like causes, right? That brand will have an opportunity to stand out in a very cluttered environment, still be entertaining with their commercials, but be meaningful, and then surround the user, the audience, with other content that talks about their good doings within those communities. So
he is Jason Teitler. The company is Barson Marsteller.
Barson Marsteller,
yeah. That's a mouthful. Thanks for coming on, man. Tell everybody where to find more information about this.
Well, certainly on our website, you can go to Burson's homepage and find
That's
the link to.
BURSONMARSTELLER.
That is correct.
Thanks
Yep.
for all you've done for us over the
Thank
years.
you
man.
very
Appreciate
much.
it.
It's been a pleasure.
Now,
Thank
I'm
you,
gonna
sir.
wear you out now. You're gonna be on the show 4 times a year talking about.
I love it.
Smart stuff. So
The smart stuff.
I like some of this.
I don't know if you got the right guy then.
Just have some coffee when you come on, and
We'll
'cause
be all
we're gonna
good.
disagree a lot, and that's good.
Well, listen, that's what it's all about, right? Having a conversation.
We're all trying to figure it out, aren't we?
Yeah, no doubt.
Hey, man, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jason
Thank you, guys.
Tyler joining us here. We're live on Super Bowl Radio Row at Super Bowl 51 at the George Rufus Brown Convention Center. He's Luke. I'm Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports